Wednesday, December 4th. Time is 6:55 p.m. Attending the Merriam Planning Commission meeting at Merriam City Hall, 2024. Hey. Doing great. Yourself? I'm hoping they approve even fewer restrictions than their staff is recommending, like a litany of they're allowed to only under these circumstances.
I'm here for a school assignment. Taking social trashing.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry.
Oh, hey, Dennis. I'm Russ. Nice to meet you. Yeah, Russ. Well, I actually don't live in Merriam any longer. I lived in Merriam for 40 years in 1980. But I've been showing you some of the 2 or 3 miles from the city. Still get planning commissions. So,
I mean, well, I'm east to west, so Merriam.
figured since that was a Merriam block, it is always synced. GMT.
Every council meeting, I need to just keep telling myself, I need to get up there and change it. But it is now, so.
Okay, don't you have, let's see, this is under this building that have to have GMT done?
No, we do not.
Oh. Do we have form?
Yes, we
Call to order meeting for the planning commission, for December the 4th, 2024. Would you please stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Administration business. Will the secretary please administer the oath of office to our new planning commissioners?
Yes, sir. All right, Ms. Nita, we're gonna do you first. So I'm gonna read a statement and ask that you say I do. Do you, Nita Dillon, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution and laws of the United States of America and the Constitution and laws of the state of Kansas and the laws and ordinances of the city of Merriam, and that you will faithfully and to the best of your ability discharge the duties of planning commissioner? So help you God.
I do.
Thank you. Daniel, you're next. Do you, Daniel Molina, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution and laws of the United States of America and the Constitution and laws of the state of Kansas and the laws and ordinances of the city of Merriam, and that you will faithfully and to the best of your ability discharge the duties of planning commissioner, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Welcome to the board, new members. We'll get you up to speed and dip you in the water once in a while. So anyway, congratulations. Thank you for your service and your being with us. Okay. Has everybody read the?
Excuse me, it's my fault, we didn't do the roll call, that's my fault.
Okay.
Apologize.
Could the secretary please make a new roll call?
Bill Bailey,
Here.
Mitchell Fowler, Russ Harmon,
Here.
Kelsey Cone,
Here.
Sarah Limbacher,
Here.
Sean McConnell,
Here.
Cole Stevens,
Here.
Nita Dillon,
Here.
Daniel Molina.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, commission members, you have received a copy of the minutes for November the 6th, 2024 meeting. Is there any comments or corrections that need to be done? Hearing none, is there a motion for approval?
I'd move to approve the minutes of the planning commission's November 6, 2024 meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? First order of business for the evening is considering a text amendment ordinance related to the accessory structures and accessory dwelling units, and to conduct a public hearing on the ordinance. That would be, review and consider the amendments to the Merriam Code, Chapter 74, Article 8, accessory usuries as it relates to accessory dwelling units and accessory structure and bulk requirements. Mr. Dyer.
Chair, Commissioners, Brian Dyer, Community Development Director. Just first of all, before I start in on this, again, congratulations and
welcome to the new commissioners. Just also let the other commissioners know that I have talked with both Ms. Dillon and Mr. Molina and got them up to speed as much as I could on the issue tonight. So while I am going to go through what we've been and the ground we covered already, just want to let you all know that I have briefed them on the discussions you all have had as well as the city council. So with that being said, a little bit also about what we're doing tonight and what the process is. Again, this is a text amendment that was initiated by the city council. The process is you all studied this amendment, provided staff with direction at your previous meeting. Staff has crafted a draft ordinance for your all's consideration and for you all to hold a public hearing on. You all are the entity that does hold the public hearing on this item. So you all are the ones that do receive public comment. You do, as you do with zonings and preliminary development plans, you will be making a recommendation to the city council. And then the city council will be taking final action on this item. Again, this item right now is scheduled for the first meeting in January because of the Christmas holiday. Traditionally councils their second meeting in December. Then the last thing I would add is just remind everybody that your all's recommendation does carry weight because per statute and city ordinance, if the council wanted to go a different direction, your recommendation would require a super majority at the level. So with that, I will go through. A lot of this is going to be things that we talked about last month, but again, just get everybody on the same playing field as to what we're discussing tonight. So again, accessory dwelling units, there are ADUs in the nomenclature. For the background, as I mentioned earlier, in September, council initiated this amendment, requested the planning commission to review accessory dwelling units. A little bit more about accessory dwelling units, why are this kind of unique within Merriam code as well as most Midwest communities codes. Single family zoning allows one residential unit per lot. The accessory dwelling unit would be another dwelling unit that's accessory to the primary unit on a lot. So essentially, you would have two dwelling units in a single family zone, on a single family zone lot. So that's what's unique about this. So again, as I mentioned earlier, staff provided you all with some information at your last meeting. You provided direction from the meeting, and we have drafted an ordinance which we have before you this evening. What are the goals of the ADU ordinances? Again, to create the opportunities for additional quality housing, also to make an ordinance that's easy and understandable and enforceable, the two things that staff always stresses when we do text amendments, and then also to maintain the character of our single family neighborhoods. We talked a little bit about this already, but accessory dwelling units, we know it's carriage houses, garden apartments. These are things that have been around for a very long time, but when zoning really came into play in the early 1900s, kind of single family zoning went out of style or essentially not allowed. As I've said earlier, I do believe staff is positive that there are existing ADUs in the city of Merriam. We have some of these already, and there's a very old situations of very old development that occurred before the city of Merriam was the city of Merriam. So, but again, the last bullet point I think is important to understand is that these are analogous to accessory structures, to sheds, detached garage and playhouses. And that's important to understand as to where we're recommending it be placed within the Merriam code. So this is a great illustration of examples of accessory dwelling units. The one in the upper right is the detached accessory dwelling unit. That's the little blue box. That is something that we traditionally think of when we talk about accessory dwelling units. It's another building, smaller, not as prominent as the primary building, that is a dwelling unit and is not attached to the primary structure. Top left is an example of a new attached ADU. That's when, again, essentially a new dwelling unit has been attached to an existing structure. And then the bottom one is an example where the existing space on a primary structure has been turned into a secondary unit or accessory dwelling unit. I will take a moment here to say that from staff's experience in our conversations, again, it's just anecdotal, we anticipate if this were to pass, The majority of interest we'll get from folks is in the attached ADU department. Again, the purpose of this is of ADUs is to provide people the opportunity to age in place. Also provides the opportunity if you have a family member in need of care to have them there, yet have them in space. Possibly a more economical housing option, and again to increase the housing supply. We did do some research on ADUs and just a little bit of background on them. Typically, the ADUs construction is self-financed. What does that mean? That means that the person who constructs an ADU usually does it with cash they have on hand. Financing ADUs can be is difficult. Not to go too far into it, but it's something that is difficult for a bank to do a loan on. And then typically the ADUs are constructed by the primary dwelling unit's occupant for again provide housing for a relative. And then as we mentioned last time, fewer requirements to construct an ADU is probably the biggest encouragement for ADU construction. So let's just say there's a list of communities in Johnson County that have ADU regulations. I'm just going to skip all the way to the bottom two because the ones above it really have very restrictive ADU regulations. And say that Olathe and Westwood have some of the newer ones. In particular, Olathe is one that staff looked at and because they were the least restrictive and the easiest to understand. So staff would readily admit that we looked at that and used that as a model in crafting these regulations. So getting into the proposed ordinance, you all have it in your packet. It's the information. Gave you a couple different copies. Gave you a copy that shows marked up, or essentially the text that is in red, and then gave you a clean copy to see what it will look like without all the marked up text. So what I'm going to do now is the dark text on the screen. Those are the bullet points that we talked about and Planning Commission wanted staff to use in crafting the ordinance. So I'm going to go through those bullet points and then talk about how either the proposed ordinance or existing ordinance regulations speak to that. So the first one is allow an ADU by right, and this is kind of what I was getting to earlier. By placing ADUs and calling them accessory, it really it make it pretty easy to allow them by right for single family homes. So this is existing ordinances or existing code is a permitted use of accessory or temporary use as permitted by Article 8 in this chapter. Article 8 is the accessory building article, and that is where we propose to put the accessory dwelling unit. ADU must be on the same lot or parcel. Again, from existing code, accessory use or structure, one of the definitions is that accessory use or structure is located on the same lot as the principal building. And then talking a little bit about the setbacks. These are attached ADU, we set back 6 feet from the principal structure, 7 feet from the side and rear lot lines, and 10 feet from the principal structure. Again, those are existing regulations, with the exception of being set back from the principal structure. But you can see up there, 7442.4 already has those setbacks in place. And I think this is the last one, the existing one. An applicant agreed by the final decision of the community development director can appeal the decision to the board of zoning appeals. This is essentially for all decisions made by the community development director. Anybody that wishes to appeal that decision can take it to the board of zoning appeals. So this is the actual draft ordinance. Again, it would be item 15 in the accessory building chapter 74-422, and the bullet points above it are the ones that we're addressing with the text. So kind of lumped all these together. Attached or detached, to allow attached or detached ADUs. Say the accessory dwelling unit provide independent living facilities. Accessory dwelling unit have a kitchen, living room, bathroom, and an existing structure can be converted into accessory dwelling unit. So the first part of the text up there is the definition of an ADU. So under A, it defines an ADU, says it can be a building or part of a building that provides independent living facilities. I won't go through through all of it. It says accessory dwelling unit can be attached to a principal dwelling or detached structure. We did get a few comments and questions in regards to the statement that accessory dwelling unit must have a kitchen, living room, bathroom, or 1 or 2 bedrooms. Just to be clear, folks would ask us, does that allow someone to not do an efficiency unit or a studio? That is certainly not the case. That really is saying up there that you must have the space for those types of living areas. Studio apartments that I'm familiar with, you usually would set up with a kitchen, a little dining area, then a living room, and then a little bedroom off to the side with a bathroom. That is certainly, and the living room wouldn't be separated necessarily by walls. That is certainly would fit within the definition of what an ADU is. So this staff's feelings is these definitions in no way precludes an efficiency or a studio type unit. Touched on this already, ADU must be on the same parcel. Property owner must occupy the principal or accessory dwelling unit. This is when the city council considered this item, this is one of the things council asked the planning commission to review. Our proposed regulations state that the property owner must occupy the principal's single-family dwelling unit or the ADU. The thought process behind that was that if the property owner is there on site, and when they would obviously have a stake or valued interest in making sure that property maintenance on the other dwelling unit would be maintained and that it would be kept up to a nice and neat appearance. Staff does have a little bit of concern about code enforcement on an ADU. Perhaps it won't be as visible as the primary structure. Obviously, it's going to be a question of who's really responsible for the ADU upkeep, since it is on a single lot, since it's only on one lot. So again, having the property owner on site on one of those 2 units would seem to help alleviate some of those property maintenance concerns. The other bullet point, attached ADUs must have a 1-hour firewall separation between the dwelling units. That should be plural units. Again, this is building code, and we're, as we mentioned a number of times, we're modifying building code or changing building code. However, we did put this in there because this is going to be a pretty significant item for somebody to do an attached dwelling unit. So we just want to put that up front, give somebody knowledge that that is going to be a requirement. Again, touched on this a little bit earlier about setbacks. Again, a detached ADU must be set back 6 feet behind the principal structure, getting back to the idea that this is an accessory to the principal structure. It should take a secondary stance or role to the principal structure, so making sure it's set back behind it is going to help buttress that and help make sure that is the perception. New detached ADUs must have separate utility connections. This comes from building code as well as utility companies, primarily water and sewer. In our conversations with them, they both reiterated that a new detached ADU is going to have its own service lines. It cannot lie into an existing water line or existing sanitary sewer line. Now, what does that mean? For I mentioned before, the first part of my presentation, staff does believe there are existing ADUs in Merriam, and these regulations require them to put in all new sanitary sewer lines or water lines. They would not. From staff's perspective, if the building was constructed as a dwelling unit and has been used as a dwelling unit, has water and sewer to it, we certainly would not intend for them to put in new water and sewer lines. That would seem to defeat kind of the purpose of the whole regulation. So just wanted to make that clear. So that's why it says new detached ADUs.
Question, Brian?
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think Water One and JCW says that there can only have one tap per lot.
No, they will allow multiples. They will usually need to they usually make sure that the city regulations allow multiple dwelling units per lot. So that is usually, at least in our experience, of why they wouldn't allow multiple taps on a lot, because they're concerned about, not following zoning rules.
So, I'm confused for the older portion of Merriam,
Mm-hmm.
because in a lot of the plats, a lot of single dwellings were, platted with 2 lots. And out of that 2 lots, back when Merriam put in all the sewer lines from JCW, they put tap connections at the corners, at the streets for each lot. And from previous experience with the JCW, it was made very, very clear that if you had a single lot, you would have to pay if you were going to attach an accessory building. If you wanted sewer like to a garage or something like that, you would have to pay for a connect.
Correct. Oh, that is definitely the case. Now, I'm not saying they won't charge you for a connection, but they will let you have a connection. That is not saying they won't charge you for one. That is definitely not what staff said.
But if you have 2 lots, when the sewer lines went in and the taps were put in, they would not charge you for tap.
That is definitely not the case now.
Okay. I just want everybody to understand what's going on here, because, you know, if we've got it defined, if we need any more definition, if we don't want any more definition, we just want to let the utility people take over and handle all of it.
That is, yes, because they're the folks, because we aren't the utility providers, they're the ones that do that. And that's also, that bullet point there at the bottom is one of the primary drivers of why, as I mentioned earlier, most detached ADUs are done on a cash basis, because that is one of the main drivers of increasing the per square foot cost of a detached ADU is exactly that, is the utility connection. Because it's a smaller unit, but it's still gonna pay the exact, whether it's a 500 square foot ADU or a 3,500 square foot single family home, it pays the exact same cost of utility connections. And so that is one of the main drivers for why the cost of them are so much.
Okay.
I have a quick question.
Uh-huh.
We were on the square footage, right, with the 50%, no more than 50%, 1,000 square feet or no more than 50%. I remember conversations in regards to the minimum square footage. Or do we get to those later, or is that assumed within other ordinances around?
The latter. It
Okay.
is, yeah, it is actually in the, and it is here, but we'll talk about it,
Okay.
It is in the property maintenance code. They do establish, square footages for, livable space, and it's something that our our rental, code enforcement officer does use on a regular basis.
Okay.
It is a very complicated piece of language that's in the code, in the building code. That's one reason why I didn't put it in there. But yes, we do have those standards, so we will be, required. And again, if I remember correctly, as I talked last time, we went through and did a real quick calculation of, hey, if you build as I mentioned earlier, with a kitchen, living space, bedroom, and bathroom, what would be the smallest one you could make? And I want to say we came up with about 500 square feet, 550, but that would be about the smallest one you could make. So, again, 1,000 square feet, just as Commissioner McCollum just mentioned, maximum size of 1,000 square feet or 50% of the principal structure's floor area. Again, making sure that it stays accessory. Mentioned earlier about dwelling unit must have kitchen, living room. The final bullet point, ADU and principal structure cannot cause a lot's impervious surface to go exceed 75%. Again, trying to balance that act of giving folks the opportunity for alternative living space and alternative housing, but still at the same time understanding that A, these are still single family neighborhoods, so green space and green area is important, and then B, you know, more pavements and more roofs does have a cost of increased runoff and stormwater management that the city must handle. So that's what that final bullet point is trying to balance there. The very top there, the ADU shall meet building code requirements as adopted by the city. So as I mentioned before and continue to mention, we're not changing building code. ADU must have its own entrance and street address. That gets back to one, life safety, so EMS 911 can really find it. And then two, particularly for the attached ADUs, just make sure that a person who lives in an ADU doesn't have to go through the main door and have to go through somebody's living room to get to their own. So that's the purpose of that. ADU must have access to one off-street parking space. The space can be derived at the principal structure's existing driveway. This is another bullet point that there is quite a bit of conversation at the planning commission as well as somewhat at the city council level. Again, this is trying to balance a number of different interests. First interest is that, as I mentioned before, neighborhoods really do get concerned when there's a lot of off-street parking. While it may be legal, there's still, on-street parking that happens in their neighborhood. While it may be legal, they still raises some concern. So balance that with, like I said earlier, we're trying to make sure to keep costs down, keep the amount of impervious surfaces manageable. So requiring a new dedicated parking space for an ADU will increase the cost of building that ADU and also increase the amount of impervious surfaces. Not to say someone couldn't do it, but we're not going to mandate it here. And then, so the middle ground is to say if there is a parking space in the existing driveway, that would be something that a ADU dweller can utilize. Then you can convert an existing structure into an attached or detached ADU. And the community development director can approve exceptions from these requirements that stated earlier. Staff will say right now that if someone wants to convert an existing detached garage into an ADU, they're probably going to be better off just scraping it and starting fresh. But this is really also trying to address, as I mentioned, or as I continue to mention, there are some existing ADUs within the city of Merriam. So, and the last thing is no restrictions on short-term rentals. That's both the planning commission and city council said they didn't want to see that. So I will stop there because the next part is my bonus code amendment, and it's pretty straightforward. I will go through it, but I'm going to stop right there and give the opportunity for the planning commission. If there's questions of me about this, I'll be happy to answer.
I have one. Go ahead. One thing I was thinking about in terms of those square footage elements is there are a lot of very large lots in Merriam with some very tiny houses.
Mm-hmm.
So massive lots, 1,000 square foot house. If someone wanted to build a house or a house on that of 2,000 square feet and turn their old home into an ADU, we'd have no issues with that.
No, surely not. That actually would probably be a pretty efficient way to do it.
Yeah.
Is exactly what you just described. That
Okay.
would be an efficient way to.
Just want to make sure there was nothing to prevent that strange shift, but we have lots to do it in this city.
And that actually might be a situation where you could readily get financing for it, building the primary structure. That is, provided it meets the setbacks and things like that, I think that is certainly a viable thing.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So a multi-dwelling on a single lot, but had to be sold as a single lot. You couldn't split the lot in half.
Correct. That is one of the primary tenets of this ordinance, is with all ADU ordinances, is that the ADU and the primary structure are tied together and they cannot be separated. They have to be always owned by the same, on the same parcel and owned by the same individual entity. That is correct.
Sold as a single. I understand that. If anybody's wanting to build a new 3,000 square foot house on their 3 acres. Any other questions for Mr. Dyer? Any other comments?
If not, I'm gonna finish up real quick and let you have your public hearing. So, this is the bonus, the bonus part of this amendment. That is our current language, A and B. B is a very long paragraph, that covers a lot of different things. And what staff's main problem we have with this is to do with a corner lot and not to get deep into the minutia of code. But corner lots have 2 front yards. Per our accessory building regulations, you can't have an accessory building closer than 60 feet to the, front property line. Again, that's not really a problem because, accessory buildings go behind or in the side yard. But what happens on B is it tries to differentiate if you have a corner lot, which one gets the 60-foot setback and which one gets the 30-foot setback. And it's extremely unclear. So staff redlined it, puts those changes in there. And then, so what we did essentially is, take those one short paragraph and one very long paragraph and put it into 7 points. And point number 7 is really the one we're trying to get some clarity, and that simply says that we'll do the 60-foot setback from the street in which the main building is addressed on, and a 30-foot setback from the other street from corner lots. We feel that this change is exactly the same as this is exactly the same as this. We certainly have no intent to change this, or to make anything non-conforming. We simply wanted to make it much more readily understandable. So, with that, I'll be happy to answer your questions about this portion of it, but that is even my presentation.
So what was the preference of the staff for the ADU for main?
We did not.
Coming in from the side on the corner lot, or coming straight up?
That's an excellent question. The preference for us is what makes the most sense and what is most readily, easily addressed and easily identifiable for EMS and 911. We aren't recommending legislating that because it could be in some situations if the ADU is better, particularly in a corner lot, to take access from the other street and not the main street. So we are confident in our dealings with Ames addressing. Ames is the county mapping folks. Ames addressing, and they are also with the E911 addressing. We're comfortable that they're able to handle that. We have a very good relationship with them. They do a great job. So we're comfortable we can handle pretty much any address situation that we present them. Again, as long as it makes sense, and they're always really good to work with if they think that something is, well, the city is the ultimate folks that assigns those address points. If they think there's something that could be done better, they are very helpful and let us know. So we're confident that it'll work.
What about our friendly United States Post Office?
I have no comment on that. Other than to say how the system is supposed to work is we put it in Ames and E911, and the post office gets regular, quarterly probably, you get regular updates, and that's how it's supposed to be. Other than that, that's all I have.
Would the ADU for address identification be held to the same posted numbering that the primary unit would be? So like you could have 2 addresses on the same curb cut painted, or having the ADU's address next to the main entry door for the ADU?
So we will give them a separate address. So say the ADU is 1234 Goodman Street. Depending on if it's north or south, we give it 12346 Goodman Street, if we have the ability to do that. Most of the times we do. There probably could potentially be situations where we don't. At that point in time, we will usually go to Unit 1 and Unit 2, or Studio 1 and Studio 2. So that's how we do it.
And that would still be required to be posted by the ADU's door?
Yes, yes, for sure. That we didn't mention that, but that is part of code requirement, is that you have your Street numbers, house numbers readily visible and posted, yes. That would apply to ADUs as well.
So no alpha, like A, B, C.
Though we try very hard to stay away from those.
Good.
We try the only time we do that is if we don't have space to put another number in there. Us, E911, we all try to stay away from that.
Any other questions for staff? There's no more questions for staff. I will open the public hearing for comments on the ordinance. State your name.
Billy Cronin, 6633 West Street.
And
Phone number.
Yeah.
I'm gonna decline the phone number. You guys know how to contact me though. ADUs empower Merriam landowners and residents to achieve the highest and best use of the land that they already own and pay every year taxes to keep. As Brian mentioned, they keep families together, they reduce the cost of living, and they earn income for our residents. I support ADUs. I'm glad to see this coming before you today and before council and previous meetings. I think it will serve our community well to remove some of the strings attached that are in section 15 that we've been talking about. I took some notes while reviewing the agenda before this meeting, and as Brian spoke today, so I'll go on to suggest a few specific restrictions that could be stricken and why. Letter C, the property owners will probably limit themselves to one EDU anyway in most cases. I think it's not necessary for the city to intervene and tell them how many they can have. It seems, for letter D, it seems legally perilous to mandate where somebody lives as property inherits from one person to another. This could end up, invalidating somebody's ADU simply because of inheritance or somebody dying. I wouldn't even be surprised if that resulted in some sort of lawsuits down the road. Letter E, the 6-foot setback is arbitrary and duplicates existing regulations that Brian mentioned, so I don't think that's needed in this specific section. Section H, the separate utility connections is extremely burdensome and expensive. If there's not already that connection to go to, that could be $50,000, $60,000 to do the excavation and adding new lines. Additionally, if utility companies already require separate taps, as Brian said, then it is redundant for Merriam to also require it. It subverts those utilities agency over their own network if they want to change their requirements down the road, and the city has its own written requirements that get passed next month and become part of our code that it now diverges because we don't own the sewer lines. Section I is subjective and interferes with design prerogatives of the homeowner. Section J is arbitrary limitation on floor space. As some of you mentioned, there are huge lots that might have a lot of space behind them, and so to limit the floor space of an ADU that might not even be as easily visible from the street as that existing smaller home up front is problematic, and I don't see how that benefits the community. Section K, the no more than 2-bedroom limitation is equally arbitrary. It's on the inside of the ADU, for crying out loud. It's not externally visible, so the impact to the neighborhood is dubious. Letter N is a superfluous regulation as it duplicates other pre-existing city code. We already have standard standard building codes, electrical, plumbing, mechanical, all that. And that section N acknowledges those codes exist. I don't think it needs to be in this list, in this section. Less is more. Sean asked a good question about new buildings behind an old one, to turn those into an ADU, and how that, if that would be okay, right? And I think Brian said that it would. But section E says detached ADUs shall be set back at least 6 feet behind the front building line of the principal single-family dwelling. So if that new one is the principal and the front one's the ADU, it's not behind. So as currently written, that would not, I think, be permitted, and that's a good one to strike for that reason as well. That is all I had. Thank you for your consideration. These are not all bad restrictions. I just think less is more when you're writing code, whether it's programming or legal code. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any more public comments? If not, I'll close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed. Does the commission have any additional questions for staff? Hearing none. Is there a motion?
I would actually ask one, and it's in reference to what Billy, the last item Billy said, in terms of the setback. That would fall under, if someone did want to build a larger home, that would be behind the one in terms of the setback, element, where now the larger home is behind the, if, let's for example, a lot of the large lots I see even in my own neighborhood, the small house is near the front and the lot behind it is enormous. Or they build a home back there, those requirements, but where I'm going with that is that I believe that you have a portion in there that says that at the discretion of, and through the Board of Zoning Appeals, that could be dealt with, or, is that correct? Okay.
That would be, so that would be a setback issue, not a use issue, and as you know, Board of Zoning Appeals, that's the primary thing they deal with, is setback issues.
Yeah, so there's plenty of avenues to deal with that.
There is relief from that is correct. Potential relief from that.
It is addressed. Any other additional questions, comments? Is there a motion? I make a motion, I move that the planning commission forward the recommendations of approval of an ordinance amending Merriam Code, Chapter 74, Article 8, accessory use as it relates to accessory dwelling units and accessory structures bulk requirements. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Have a second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Business from the floor, Mr. Dyer.
Sure, just a couple things. One, didn't get any submittals, so it's actually going to be fortunate because the January meeting was going to be tight squeeze because of the holidays. So there will not be a January meeting. So hopefully everybody will be able to enjoy their day after New Year's because that's when it would be. So there will be a meeting in January. Just a few updates on development projects. If you haven't seen our website, there is going to be lane drops on China Mission Parkway because the undergrounding is finally going to start. So yes, China Mission Parkway, there'll be lane drops on both eastbound and westbound. So I would suggest if you can avoid that area, probably want to avoid that area, but it is exciting to see that project finally going forward after Evergy's finally got that ball rolling. We're anticipating now that it will be a July completion for that project.
So when they started?
I believe Monday is that when the lane drops. I'm looking at Ms. Yorkham to see, but yeah, it is. We not to get too deep into everything, but we just found out about it kind of at the 11th hour ourselves that KDOT had issued the permit for the lane drops. So coming very quickly, which is great. I'm excited to see that happen. The Merriam Grand Station project continues to be on schedule and on pace. Took a tour of the apartment complex a couple of days ago, the new one on the east side. There are tenants in there. It's going well, and nothing but positive things to report about that project over there. Aristocrat Mercedes, if you haven't been by there, it's looking much more like a Mercedes dealership. That building continue to have good work happening on it. And that is kind of the big development things that are happening right now as we go into the winter months and we all come in and start to slow down. So that would be happy to answer any questions.
Has the public library had any further conversations with anyone that you're aware of in terms of the corner library? Not yet? Okay.
Concept for the overhead walkway?
That's tied in with the library conversation, and, yeah, staff, when we have, conversations, we continue to make sure that is something that's
I'm not even gonna ask my question. I've asked this so many times, I'm tired of it. I'll wait till 2025.
I'll ask you, do we have any grocery stores?
Not at this time, we don't have any, applications in for that now.
Okay. Brian, unfinished business?
No, sir.
Old business?
No, sir.
Update on downtown Merriam?
Just the same update, we continue to have conversations with the Corps, and while that may seem to be mundane, but, my experience of dealing with this project, having continual meetings and conversations means that, while it may be incremental and slow, they're still making progress, so. They continue to be in communication, I have regular meetings with them, so yes, we are hoping that next year brings, a 35% complete plans for, the city council and the city, as a whole to review.
Has the city had the chance to purchase any additional property along the Turkey Creek line?
No, we have not. We continue to look for opportunities, but we have not.
Okay. You have a motion for adjournment?
I'll channel my inner Mitch and make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. See you in February. Maybe. Yes, Billy, I do know you. It's procedural.
Yes.
Everybody have a happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Ask Brian. He's the ringleader on that.
Oh, yeah, they always have to be one day. So sometimes they, sometimes vehicles and then we're just cutting up in Merriam and stuff like that, but yeah, it's always been Mercedes of Kansas City.
Yeah, so he looks to build a very new one, and Greg was like a little bit piece of that.
It's one of the things that, businesses, they obviously their choice of how they want to market it.
Oh, that's like, yeah, that's from Troy, we're more conscious of that.
Kansas City goes already. They're coming and selling cars like they are, for much higher margins.
Yeah,
It's
where you at?
easier to find.
I found them as you're coming on, and like, yeah, I went out, like, it's,
Yeah, it's kind of heyday. And sadly, though, there's no boozers for sale, so.
That one was just a kid going to Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, it's interesting how people will name themselves. The contractual agreement, they certainly could. Now, the other flip side of the coin is we want them to make sure they're able to make money. So marketing, I'll leave the marketing, they figure they probably know how to do it, but the council, if they wanted to, but like I said, the other side of the coin is we want to make sure that saying Kansas City makes more money than saying Merriam. It is hit and miss, no, you're exactly right, it is. If I could go talk to Sean, we'll go, good job with you.
Yeah, it was just very slow. Yeah, so. We got replaced number 3.
Location where it is. Yeah, it's all Merriam right there. Is it the Mercedes one? Yeah. Oh, okay, so I'm not the first one to bring it up.
Normally I don't send out.
Oh, we did.
I'm glad they did, because I know Merriam incentivized them. They went and whistled for Merriam to IKEA building here. So it was a nice token of appreciation. Anyways, is anything planned to help more businesses use the Merriam name?
Yeah, I wish you gave us, we'll keep that in mind.
We'll take the trash out. Finally got all of our turkey for Thanksgiving. I came close to it, but I hate wasting food.
It was so bland.
Yeah.
And it's so similar.